Stop what you're doing right now because what I'm about to tell you could save you or someone you love from losing everything. There's a trap specifically designed for lonely seniors that's stealing billions of dollars every single year, and it's getting worse. If this concerns you even slightly, hit that subscribe button immediately because the information I'm sharing could be the difference between keeping everything you've worked for and losing it all to criminals who have perfected the art of breaking hearts and emptying bank accounts. This isn't just about money, this is about something far more devastating. Criminals around the world have figured out how to weaponize loneliness itself. They target widows and widowers at their most vulnerable moments. They study human psychology and emotional manipulation with the precision of military operations. They know exactly when you're most susceptible, exactly what words will make you trust them, and exactly how to convince you to hand over everything while believing you're helping someone you love. Here's what makes this threat absolutely terrifying. Most scams are quick hits. Someone steals your credit card number, you report it, you move on. But this is different. These criminals spend months building relationships. They invest time learning about you, your family, your dreams, your fears. They become part of your daily routine. You wake up thinking about them. You go to sleep looking forward to talking to them tomorrow. They make you feel alive again after years of loneliness. And then when they've gained complete emotional control, they take everything. The numbers are staggering and getting worse every year. Romance scams targeting seniors are now stealing over $3 billion annually in the United States alone. That's billion with a B. But the real number is probably double or triple that because most victims are too ashamed to report what happened. They blame themselves. They feel stupid for falling for it. They can't face telling their children that they sent their inheritance to a stranger on the internet. So they suffer in silence while the criminals move on to their next victim. Let me be very clear about who's behind this. These aren't amateur operations run by kids in basements. These are sophisticated international criminal organizations with hundreds of employees. They have training manuals, they have scripts, they have psychologists designing their approaches. They operate like corporations with managers overseeing teams of scammers who work in shifts around the clock. Some organizations run dozens of fake profiles simultaneously, each one carefully crafted to appeal to specific types of lonely seniors. The technology they're using is advancing faster than people realize. They're now using artificial intelligence to analyze your social media profiles and determine exactly what kind of person you'd be most likely to fall for. They use stolen photos of real people, often military personnel or professionals, because those images convey trust and stability. They're starting to use AI-generated faces that don't correspond to any real person, making them impossible to reverse image search. Some are even using deepfake video technology to have video calls where you think you're seeing a real person, but you're actually watching a computer-generated face controlled in real time. Here's the psychological playbook they follow, and understanding this could save you. First, they find you when you're vulnerable. They monitor obituaries to identify recent widows and widowers. They search dating sites and social media for people who post about loneliness or grief. They look for seniors who are active online but might not be tech savvy enough to spot the warning signs. Once they identify a target, they move fast to establish emotional connection before you have time to think critically. The initial contact always seems natural and flattering. They complement something specific in your profile. They claim to share your interests or values. They might say they're also widowed, creating instant common ground. They express interest in getting to know you better. Within the first few conversations, they escalate quickly to more personal topics. They want to move off the dating platform or social media site onto private messaging apps where there's no oversight or protection. Then comes the love bombing phase, and this is where they're devastatingly effective. They shower you with attention unlike anything you've experienced before. They text you good morning every single day. They send you poems or love letters. They talk about a future together. They introduce the idea of meeting in person, but always with some reasonable sounding delay. Maybe they're working overseas on a contract. Maybe they're caring for a sick relative in another state. There's always a plausible reason why meeting has to wait, but they keep you engaged with constant communication that feels genuine and emotionally fulfilling. During this phase, they're gathering intelligence. They ask questions that seem caring but are actually reconnaissance. They want to know about your financial situation. They learn about your family relationships and whether you have children who might intervene. Um, They identify your emotional vulnerabilities and what matters most to you. They're building a complete psychological profile so they know exactly how to manipulate you when the time comes to ask for money. The money requests always come with elaborate stories designed to trigger your protective instincts and your desire to help someone you love. They've perfected these narratives over thousands of successful scams. They know which stories work and which don't. The request is never just give me money. It's always wrapped in a crisis that makes you feel like you're rescuing them from a terrible situation. And the amounts start small to build trust before escalating to life-changing sums. Here's what makes victims keep sending money even when warning signs appear. By the time the first money request comes, you're emotionally invested. You've been talking to this person for months. You have feelings for them, you've shared intimate details of your life, you've started imagining a future together. Walking away now means admitting to yourself that everything was a lie, that the person you love doesn't exist, that you were fooled. That psychological barrier is so powerful that many victims continue sending money even when family members and friends are desperately trying to convince them it's a scam. The isolation tactics they use are particularly cruel. As the relationship progresses, they start to separate you from your support system. They suggest that your children don't want you to be happy. They claim your friends are jealous of your new relationship. They position themselves as the only person who truly understands you. So, this isolation serves two purposes. First, it removes people who might recognize the scam and intervene. Second, it makes you more emotionally dependent on the scammer, increasing their control over you. Let me tell you about the warning signs that should make you immediately suspicious, because recognizing these could save everything you own. First, if someone is interested in you romantically but refuses to meet in person or always has excuses about why meeting has to be delayed, that's a massive red flag. Real people who are genuinely interested in relationships want to meet face to face. Scammers need to maintain distance because they're not who they claim to be. Second, if the relationship progresses to declarations of love unusually quickly, be extremely suspicious. Real relationships develop gradually over time with in-person interaction. If someone is saying they love you within weeks or even days of first contact, they're following a scam script, not expressing genuine feelings. This rapid escalation is designed to create emotional intensity before you have time to think critically about what's happening. Third, if they claim to be American citizens but are currently overseas and can't return home for some reason, investigate that claim thoroughly. The overseas angle is used because it explains why they can't meet you and creates opportunities for money requests related to travel, customs, medical emergencies in foreign countries, or business deals that supposedly went wrong. Fourth, if they ask you to move communication off the original platform where you met onto private messaging apps, email, or text messages, that's a warning sign. They want to get away from platforms that monitor for scam behavior and can shut down suspicious accounts. Once you're communicating privately, there's no oversight and no way to report them easily. Fifth, any request for financial help, no matter how reasonable it sounds or how small the initial amount is, should end the relationship immediately. There is no legitimate reason why someone you've never met in person should be asking you for money. None. If they claim to love you but need financial help, they're a scammer. Period. Real romantic interests don't ask for money from people they've never met. Sixth, if they send you money or valuable items and then ask you to forward them to someone else or return them, stop all contact immediately. This is a money laundering scheme. The money they sent you is stolen, and you're being used to make it harder to trace. You can be held legally responsible for participating in money laundering even if you didn't know what was happening. Seventh, if they ask you to open bank accounts, receive packages, or conduct any financial transactions on their behalf, you're being recruited as a money mule for criminal operations. This is illegal, and you will face criminal charges if you participate, regardless of whether you knew you were helping criminals. The recovery process after falling victim to these scams is brutal. And I want to be honest about that because prevention is so much better than trying to fix the damage afterward. First, the money is almost always gone forever. These operations move money through multiple countries and accounts within hours. By the time you realize you've been scammed and report it, the funds are in jurisdictions where law enforcement can't touch them. Banks and wire transfer services rarely refund money sent in romance scams because you authorize the transactions voluntarily. Second, the emotional trauma is severe and long-lasting. Victims often experience depression, anxiety, and shame that persists for years. Many become isolated because they're too embarrassed to tell anyone what happened. They lose trust, not just in online relationships, but in their own judgment about everything. They second guess every decision. They become paranoid about who they can trust. The psychological damage often impacts their remaining years more than the financial loss. Third, family relationships frequently suffer permanent damage. Children who tried to warn their parents about the scam but were ignored often feel angry and betrayed. They can't understand how their parent could choose a stranger on the internet over their own family's concerns. The parent feels defensive and ashamed, creating distance that's hard to bridge. Inheritance that children expected disappears, causing resentment. These family rifts often never fully heal. Now, let me tell you what you need to do to protect yourself or help a loved one who might be vulnerable. First, if you're looking for companionship after losing a spouse, stick to in-person opportunities, join local groups, attend community events, participate in activities where you meet real people face to face. Online relationships bypass the natural safeguards that in-person interaction provides. You can't fake body language and real-world presence the way you can fake an online profile. Second, if you do use dating sites or social media, be extremely skeptical of anyone who contacts you first with a romantic interest. Scammers initiate contact because they're actively hunting for victims. They're not waiting to be discovered, they're seeking you out. That's fundamentally different from how real relationships typically develop online. Third, never send money to anyone you haven't met in person, regardless of their story or how much you think you love them. Create this as an absolute rule with no exceptions. Write it down. Tell your family about this rule so they can help you stick to it. The moment someone asks for money, end all contact and report them to the platform where you met. Fourth, keep your financial information completely private. Don't discuss your savings, investments, property, or assets with online contacts. Scammers specifically ask about finances under the guise of getting to know you better, but they're actually assessing whether you're a worthwhile target. Protect this information the same way you'd protect your social security number. Fifth, do reverse image searches on photos sent to you by online contacts. Right-click on their profile pictures and use Google's reverse image search feature. If those photos appear elsewhere online associated with different names or on stock photo websites, you're dealing with a scammer using stolen images. This simple check takes 30 seconds and can save you from months of manipulation. Sixth, involve trusted family members or friends in your online social life. Show them profiles of people you're talking to. Share conversations if you're developing feelings for someone. Outside observers who aren't emotionally involved can often spot red flags that you miss when you're caught up in the excitement of a new connection. Don't let anyone isolate you from your support system. Seventh, educate yourself about common scam scenarios so you recognize them when they're happening to you. Scammers use the same stories repeatedly because they work. Learning what these stories are gives you the knowledge to identify them immediately. When someone tells you about their contract work overseas or their sick relative or their business deal gone wrong, you'll recognize the script they're following. The technology angle of these scams is evolving in ways that make them even more dangerous. Artificial intelligence is being used to create fake video calls where you think you're seeing the person, but you're actually watching a computer-generated face that responds in real time. Voice cloning technology can take samples of someone's voice and generate phone calls that sound exactly like them. Dating apps and social media platforms are struggling to keep up with increasingly sophisticated fake profiles that pass initial verification checks. Let me address something that victims often struggle with, the shame and self-blame. If you fall for one of these scams, you're not stupid, you're not uniquely gullible. You're a normal person who was targeted by professional criminals who spent months manipulating you using psychological techniques refined over thousands of victims. These operations are sophisticated enough to fool intelligent, educated, successful people from all backgrounds. The shame belongs to the criminals, not to you. However, there's a difference between compassion for victims and enabling destructive behavior. If someone you love is involved with an online romance and refusing to listen to concerns, you may need to take stronger action. This might include discussing power of attorney with an attorney if the person is losing substantial money. It might mean limiting their access to large sums of money if they're actively sending funds to a scammer despite warnings. These are difficult conversations and decisions, but sometimes protection requires intervention that feels uncomfortable. The broader societal factors that enable these scams need to be addressed. Dating sites and social media platforms have inadequate verification processes and often ignore reports about suspicious accounts. Uh, Law enforcement agencies are understaffed for investigating international internet crimes. Wire transfer services and banks make it too easy to send large amounts of money overseas without sufficient warnings or cooling off periods. Until these systemic problems are fixed, individual vigilance is your only real protection. Here's what you should do right now, today, to protect yourself or someone you care about. First, have a conversation with your spouse or trusted family member about these scams and agree on a pact that neither of you will send money to anyone you haven't met in person without discussing it together first. This accountability can stop a scam before it starts. Second, if you're active on dating sites or social media, review your privacy settings and limit what personal information is publicly visible. Scammers use this information to target and manipulate you. Third, save this video and share it with every widow, widower, or divorced senior. These scams thrive on people not knowing they exist. Education is the most powerful prevention tool we have. If this information has opened your eyes to a threat you didn't fully understand, you need to take action immediately. Share this video with your spouse, text it to retired friends, email it to anyone you know who uses dating sites or social media. This information could literally save someone from financial ruin and heartbreak. Hit that subscribe button because I'm releasing more critical warnings about threats targeting your generation every single week, information the mainstream media isn't covering because they're afraid of the topic. And comment below if you've encountered anything suspicious online or if you know someone who's been targeted. Your experience could help someone else recognize a scam before it's too late. Don't wait until someone you love has already lost everything. The time to prepare and protect is right now.